Chapter 2. Put on your wig! Jack opened his eyes. He looked down at his clothes. He was wearing a blue velvet coat, a long vest, and knee-length pants. His shoes were black with shiny buckles. Jack looked up at Annie and burst out laughing. Her pigtails had changed into thick, cigar-shaped curls. She was wearing a pink dress covered with lace and bows. There was a big hoop underneath her skirt to hold it out. The hoop, the skirt, and lots of petticoats were all bunched up around Annie. "You look like you're standing in a basket," said Jack. "You look like an old woman," said Annie. She pointed at Jack's head. Jack reached up and lifted off a black velvet hat. But something else was on his head, too. He pulled off a white wig with curls on the side and a ponytail in the back. "A wig?" said Jack. His nose tickled. He sneezed, and a cloud of white powder puffed from his wig. "It's covered in powder! I can't wear this!" "Yes, you can," said Annie. "If I have to wear this," she shook her dress, "you have to wear that." "But why are we dressed this way?" asked Jack. "Because we're going to a fancy party in a palace a long time ago," said Annie. "Okay, but where's the palace?" said Jack. Jack and Annie went to the window and looked out. They had landed in a row of trees that lined a cobblestone street. At the far end of the street, glittering horse-drawn coaches were parked outside tall iron gates. "I wonder if the palace is beyond those gates," said Annie, pointing. "I don't know," said Jack. "I wish we had a research book to help us." "Merlin wants us to rely on our wits and talents," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack, "whatever that means." Bells rang in the distance. Bong, 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 bong. "5 bongs," said Annie. "What time's the party?" Jack looked at their invitation and read aloud, 5 o'clock in the evening. "Oh no, we're going to be late," said Annie. "Put on your wig." Jack crammed his wig back onto his head and put on his hat. He pushed the silver flute and invitation into a deep pocket in his coat. Annie squashed her hoop skirt and squeezed through the opening in the treehouse floor. "It's hard to climb down a rope ladder in this dress," she said. "Be careful, go slow," said Jack. "But we have to hurry," said Annie. She jumped off the ladder and landed on the ground. Jack hurried down the ladder. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," said Annie, standing up. "Just got a little dirty." She brushed off her dress. "Let's ask one of those guys about the palace." She pointed toward the coach drivers outside the iron gates. "Hurry!" Annie started to run. Her skirt swung wildly from side to side like a giant bell. "Slow down," said Jack, rushing to catch up with her. "You can't run in that big skirt. You look ridiculous. Besides, we need to discuss our mission before we go to this party." "It's simple," said Annie. "We're looking for a brilliant—" "I know, artist," finished Jack. "But how do we find this person?" "We'll get to that part soon enough," said Annie. "First, let's find the party." Jack and Annie walked toward the fancy coaches parked near the gates. "Where's our invitation?" asked Annie. "Here." Jack pulled the invitation out of his pocket. "Excuse me," said Annie, walking up to the driver of a golden coach pulled by 2 white horses. "We're looking for the summer palace." Jack showed their invitation to the man. The driver nodded approvingly. "Ah, so you are guests of the imperial family," he said. "But why are you arriving on foot? Where's your coach?" Our driver led us back there," said Annie, pointing down the street. "I fear he let you out too soon," said the driver. "You still have quite a distance to go." "We do?" said Annie. "Yes," said the driver. "I have already delivered my employer and his family to the palace. I was waiting here until the party ended. But, if you like, I can take you there. Young nobles should always arrive by coach." "Oh, thanks," said Annie. Jack straightened his shoulders and tried to look noble. "My name is Yosef," said the man. "Come, let me help you." Yosef held out his hand. Annie took it, and Yosef helped her up onto a cushioned leather seat. Yosef helped Jack up too. Then the friendly driver climbed onto a bench behind the milk-white horses. "Wow, I feel like Cinderella going to the ball," Annie said to Jack. Yosef snapped the reins. The horses took off, and the guards opened the gates. The coach clattered over the cobblestones into an immense square. The squares were bathed in the last light of day. Monks in brown robes strolled around a huge fountain. Soldiers in uniforms rode on horseback. On the far side of the square was a long building. It had bright yellow walls and dozens of windows that flashed with the light of the setting sun. "Is that the summer palace, sir?" Annie called to Yosef. "Yes, indeed," Yosef said over his shoulder, "and there is much more that you cannot see. Behind the palace is a garden of nearly 300 acres. It has beautiful flowers, orchards, fountains, and a zoo." "A zoo?" said Jack. "Hello, boy and girl!" came a high little voice. A closed blue coach passed them. A small boy wearing a white wig was calling from a window. He pointed at Jack and laughed. "Your wig is crooked!" he shouted in his high voice. Before the boy could say more, someone pulled him back from the window, and the blue coach rumbled away. "What an annoying kid," said Jack. "Is my wig crooked?" "A little." Annie lifted Jack's hat off. She tried to straighten his wig as they lurched and swayed on the cushioned seat. "There," she said, "that's better." Yosef drove the horses to the front of the palace. The coach stopped near a staircase that led up to a terrace. Yosef helped Jack and Annie down from their seat. "I can tell this is your first visit to the palace," said Yosef. "At the door you must show the guard in the red uniform your invitation. He will direct you to the receiving line." "The receiving line? What's that?" said Jack. "That is where you will wait to be introduced," said Yosef. "Introduced to who?" asked Jack. "To Her Imperial Majesty Maria Theresa. She is Archduchess of Austria, Queen of Hungary, Croatia, and Bohemia, and the Empress of the Holy Roman Empire," said Yosef. "Oh, right," said Annie. "Yeah, right," thought Jack. "Help!"